I just want to briefly share my own story and how I came across homeopathy. I came across homeopathy because of my daughter, actually. So she's, at the time she was a child and now she's 19. But she was diagnosed with autism. So I tried many different therapies for many years, and then somehow I came across homeopathy. I was really hesitant to try it because I didn't know anything about it. And nobody in my circle used homeopathy. So I called up one of the colleges here in Toronto. I asked them about it. They had a teaching clinic, an outpatient clinic. I'm still hesitant, but I thought, okay, can't hurt to add this to her therapy. And so I booked an appointment, went to the initial appointment, spent 2 hours talking to a student homeopath there. And then after the 2 hours, they gave me a little bottle with 5 little pellets in it, smaller than the size of a grain of rice. And they instructed me to give 1 pellet to her once a week and then come back for a follow-up when the bottle's done. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? What is this? And then I considered throwing away the bottle, and I thought, no, I got to stick with this. I can't do any harm. So I did as instructed. And then right away, I saw that she was calmer. She slept better. Her wart went away. She had more words. And I was like, whoa, these are really noticeable positive changes for such a small little pellet. So then anyways, I booked my husband in for an appointment because he has asthma, and then his asthma cleared up. And then at the time I was struggling with PMS and hormonal issues. And so I decided to book myself for an appointment, and then my PMS went away. So at that point I was sold. I was like, what is this? What is homeopathy? And at that point, I just decided I'm going to study this. I'm going to study this. I want to know everything about this. I want to spread this amazing healing to everyone. So that was 12 years ago, and I never looked back. So that was my personal story, how I came across homeopathy. So, okay, what is homeopathy? So let's talk a little bit about that. So homeopathy it's gentle, it's a natural healing system that works with the body to relieve symptoms and to restore vitality and improve overall health. So it is a regulated profession here in Ontario. All homeopaths must be regulated with the regulatory college. And the homeopathic remedies are also regulated by Health Canada. And so homeopathy strengthens our own body to fight short-term illnesses and also in chronic conditions too. And it was developed by a German physician in 1796 by, his name was Samuel Hahnemann. So let's talk about some of the fundamentals of homeopathy, because this is what makes it unique from other modalities. So one of the fundamental principles of homeopathy is that like cures like, or what we call the law of similars. So what this means is that homeopaths use a homeopathic remedy to alleviate symptoms that an individual is suffering from by using a similar substance that can cause these symptoms in a healthy individual. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but the remedies stimulate your body's natural reaction to the illness. They stimulate your body's defense system to correct itself naturally. So, for instance, if you're suffering from sleeplessness or insomnia, then a homeopath will find a similar substance that would create the sleeplessness and insomnia in a healthy person. So, for instance, we all know that coffee can keep you up, keep some people up. So if the symptom picture fits, we could use homeopathic coffee to help with sleeplessness. So essentially, we're telling the body that something is causing these symptoms, and we're using this substance to kind of nudge and activate and stimulate the body to respond. So I hope that makes sense. And then the second principle is what makes homeopathy really powerful. And it's the principle of an individualized treatment. So what this means is that we treat the person, we take into account the individual characteristics of the symptom and of the person, as well as the disease that they're suffering from. And again, this is where the power of homeopathy is because it's individualized and we see the person as a whole. So the homeopath considers the whole total symptom picture. And we select a remedy that best matches their individual condition. So, for example, if someone is coming to me for headaches, each of them will probably get a different homeopathic remedy because we don't necessarily give the same remedy based on clinical diagnosis, but based on the individual symptoms of that person. So I would ask them, when did the headache start? Was it an accident? Was there grief in the family? Where is the location of the pain? What are the triggers? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Is there a specific time that the pain comes on? And what are the sensations of that pain? Some people will say it's a dull pain. Some people will say it's a throbbing pain. Some people will say it's a stabbing pain. So I need to know what these individual symptoms and sensations are. And we carefully consider all of these symptoms when we come up with a treatment for you. So homeopathy is a great medical system that can be used standalone in some conditions. So for instance, my son is 11 and he was born at home, and he never been to a hospital, and he's only been to the doctor for baby wellness visits. And I've just been able to treat him at home with homeopathy. So he's had fevers, he's had diarrhea, and colds and flus and different things. And I just treated him with homeopathy. So it's great as a standalone, but it's also great as a complementary medicine too. So for example, if someone sustains a fracture, they're going to have to go to the hospital. They're going to have to make sure that they get x-rays done, that the bones are set properly, that they get their cast and it's plastered properly. However, we could use homeopathy for pain relief, for better calcification and quicker healing. And in other chronic conditions like rheumatic arthritis, we can increase the quality of life by helping to manage pain, reducing the stiffness, reducing swelling, decreasing flare-ups, increasing the range of motion, and slowing down the progression of chronic diseases. So it's pretty powerful and versatile. So what do homeopathic remedies look like? Well, I mentioned the pills, so it can come in a dry form. They can be found in pellets, in a glass bottle. Usually you can find them at the health food store in like a chapstick kind of a tube. Then you would take the pellet, put it on your tongue and let it melt. And pellets taste like sugar, so I actually have no problem giving it to, especially to kids. And they tend to last forever unless they're damaged. And they can also be found in liquid form. So you would take a dropper full of a remedy, either put it in a small glass and sip it, or you can put it directly under your tongue. So homeopathic remedies they're environmentally friendly, they're cruelty-free, derived from natural substances, and they're affordable as well. So most remedies, well, some remedies are available at natural health food stores. They're available at grocery stores, some pharmacies. You can find them on Amazon now. And again, they're affordable and accessible. So although homeopathy and homeopathic remedies, they're derived from natural substances, it's not like other alternative modalities. So we do get confused a lot with naturopathic medicine. It's not naturopathic medicine, although some naturopaths may use homeopathic remedies. It's not herbalism. It's not traditional Chinese medicine. It's not Ayurvedic medicine. It is quite unique. So here are some facts about homeopathy. So worldwide, over 200 people use homeopathy on a regular basis. Homeopathy is included in the national healthcare system in some countries, such as Brazil, Chile, India, Mexico, Pakistan, Switzerland. And in India, where it's mostly used, 100 million people depend solely on homeopathy for their medical care. And so let's look more closely at homeopathy and brain injury. So there was a study done called Homeopathic Treatment of Mild Traumatic Brain Injury, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. I do have the link for this at the end of my slides if you're interested in digging deeper and reading about this study. So in this randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, 60 patients were randomly assigned to receive a homeopathic medicine or a placebo, and they were followed up for 4 months. And this was conducted at the Spalding Rehabilitation Hospital. So their progress at the end of 4 months was measured against using 3 standardized functional tests. And the results demonstrated that there was significant improvement in the homeopathic treatment group. And so the study suggests that homeopathy may play a significant role in treating persistent traumatic brain injury. Okay. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? I know I covered a lot.
Looks like we have 1 or 2 in the chat here. Someone was asking, does it treat chronic pain?
It can help with symptoms of chronic pain for sure. Again, you'd have to go to a homeopath and have your case assessed by a homeopath.
Another question is, does it cover things like stress? So I guess if you are experiencing stress, would that be an option for you?
It can be amazing in cases of stress and anxiety. There are a lot of remedies that we can choose from for that. So yeah. Okay. So let's move on, because I think some of the questions may be answered in the rest of my presentation. So I wanted to look more specifically at some common remedies related to brain and head injuries. Okay. So the first one is Arnica montana, and this is probably the king of homeopathic remedies and the most used of all homeopathic remedies. So arnica is an herb. It's a flower that belongs in the daisy family, and they're found high up in the mountains. And traditionally in herbal medicine, arnica was used as a tincture for bruises, strains, sprains, sore muscle, joints, and any kind of external injuries or injuries. And this is probably the most commonly used remedy for head injuries in homeopathic form. So arnica, it can be used when there's shock. There's shock from the injury. When shock sets in, the person feels disconnected from their own well-being. It's known, it's effective in cases where there's lots of swelling and bruising from the injury. People who need arnica often describe the sensation of being bruised and sore. They feel bruised and sore all the time. And they feel like their body has been beaten up. And there's a strange sensation of having a hot head or a hot body part. So a hot head and a cold body. Or they may describe that, a part of their body is hot and the other part is cold. And individuals who need arnica, they often are very sensitive. They've developed sensitivities to touch and pressure at the affected areas, and they're also fearful at the thought of being approached or touched. There could be convulsions and comas after a head injury. So let's look at specific indications for arnica. So shock and trauma. And even old shock and trauma that hasn't been resolved, we can think of arnica. They're often confused, they're in a fog, they feel disconnected. They can't remember details of the accident. They could be in a coma after the accident. It's good for immediately after an injury, but it's also good for old head injuries that still are causing problems and symptoms. And arnica was not initially given. Again, that bruise, sore, beaten up sensation, swelling, and bruising. So heat and cold sensations in the body. And they say, I'm fine, nothing is wrong. But they also have a fear of being touched or approached. So that's arnica. The next remedy that is also very valuable for head trauma, especially in older head trauma, especially when the person's mood changes. So when there's noticeable change in the person's, the personality of the person, there's decreased mental function, there's depression, there's thoughts of self-harm and suicide. This is when I think of Natrum sulphuricum. And they often have vertigo, ringing in the ears, chronic headaches. And they're very sensitive too. They're very sensitive to light. So the indications for Natrum sulphuricum. So it's a leading remedy for old head injuries. There's an inability to think, chronic headaches, sensitivity to light, noise, external surroundings. There's sadness, depression. They may have suicidal thoughts, anxiety, irritability, decreased mental function, ringing in the ears. And another interesting characteristic symptom of Natrum sulphuricum is that they can have asthma following a head injury. So if I see asthma following a head injury, I think of this remedy, and I'm going to show you a case later on. So that's Natrum sulph. The third remedy is hypericum. which is also called St. John's wort. And hypericum is a good remedy when injuries involve the nerves, or there's nerve compression, or there's a spinal related injury or whiplash. There may be convulsions after head injury. People who need hypericum describe themselves as feeling confused. They make mistakes in their writing, or they have trouble articulating their thoughts. And so let's look more at the indications for hypericum. So again, injury due to shock to the spine and the brain. Any kind of nerve injuries, pinched nerves, compressed nerves, shooting pain along a nerve, like a sciatic nerve. There's numbness, tingling, and burning sensations to their pain. Convulsions soon after head injury, stiff neck after whiplash. It's a great whiplash remedy. Crushing pain. It's a good phantom pain remedy. I've used it in phantom pain in the past. And as I said before, confusion, they make mistakes, and they have an interesting sensation of headaches that with the sensation as if they're being lifted into the air. So I would say those are the top 3 remedies that I use. Arnica, arnica for that bruised, swelling, beaten up, sore kind of sensations. Natrum sulfuricum for old head injuries, inability to think, chronic headaches, asthma, and hypericum for nerve and injury to the nerves. And then I'm going to talk about 2 more remedies that I've found useful in my practice as well. So there's Helleborus. Helleborus is a remedy where there's lots of delay, disconnectedness, blank facial expression, and dullness. So what are the indications for Helleborus? So mental dullness after a head injury. There's lots of delay in thinking, delay in action, delay in speech, delay in speaking, delay in answering. And they seem isolated from the world. So I had a woman that described to me that after her injury, after her accident, she said she woke up and she felt like an alien, and that she couldn't understand. She couldn't fit in the world. She couldn't understand what was going on around her. They've lost the ability to find pleasure. There's memory problems, blank facial expressions, and could have chronic headaches. That's Helleborus. The next one I found useful is Hyoscyamus. So in Hyoscyamus, in this remedy, there is a marked change in their behavior. They just become a different person after their injury. So there's a change in their behavior. This remedy has lots of spasms and twitching and tics, lots of involuntary motion, repetitive gestures. They become more talkative and they're easily excitable. And one of the strong indications of hyoscyamus is that their normal inhibitions are impaired. So they may be obscene, they do obscene things, they may handle their genitals in public, they may flash you, It doesn't have to be that extreme. It could just be inappropriate, language or inappropriate laughing. Another indication, strong indication, is stuttering and stammering after brain injury. And remember that I don't have to give hyoscyamus specifically in a brain injury. As long as the symptom picture fits, I would give hyoscyamus. So I do remember when COVID started and we all had to move online and we couldn't see people in person. We had to move online, and there was lots of Zoom bombing, and there were reports of people flashing themselves or appearing on camera naked. I'm pretty sure they could have used a dose of hyoscyamus. Yeah, so those are some of the top remedies that I use in my practice when it comes to brain injuries. So I'm going to go over some of the cases in my practice. So here's the first case of a young woman in a motor vehicle accident, and she sustained a traumatic brain injury and multiple fractures. And she was in a coma immediately after the accident. And she also experienced seizures shortly after the accident. She was then later diagnosed with aphasia, which is trouble with speaking, understanding speech, reading, and writing as a result to the damage to the brain responsible for the language processing and understanding. And she also had weakness and loss of motion in her left arm. So at the time of my assessment, she was holding her arm. She couldn't grip anything. She couldn't open the door, and she couldn't feed herself. And she had a lot of trouble answering my questions and understanding my questions. So I had to communicate with simple yes or no questions. And most of the time, she would think for a while and then simply shrug she would simply smile and then shrug her shoulders and say, I don't know. So what do you think I gave her? Have any suggestions based on the remedies I discussed? So some of the things that stood out to me was being in a coma after the accident.
Someone mentioned that they were thinking about the last one that you had just talked about. They can't remember the name.
This one and this one.
The Helleborus.
Helleborus. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I actually did give her 2 remedies in this case. So she was given arnica and Helleborus. So very good. Very good. So after 4 months, she was able to speak in longer phrases. She had better use of language, better use of words, and better recall of words. She was more expressive, and she had a much better range of motion and strength in her arm. So she was able to reach up, she was able to move her arms, and she was able to actually open the door, and she was starting to meal prep with her arms. And her therapist said she was better able to concentrate during her therapy sessions. So that's the first case. Now let's look at the second case. So case 2. So this is a senior woman with a spinal cord injury. So at her assessment, she was able to stand from her couch with her walker and take 2 steps. with her walker before needing to stop and sit and rest. So what do you think I did in this case of a spinal cord injury? Remember the remedy that I said was really good for injury to the nerves and the spinal and the spine?
Someone mentioned arnica and hypericum.
Hypericum?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So I did give her hypericum. So after a 2-week follow-up, she said she felt much stronger. She had better coordination and strength in her hands and legs. And she was able to walk with her walker to the kitchen. So she was able to walk a little bit longer with her walker before having to rest. And after 3 months follow-up, I met her in the lobby of her apartment. She got out of the passenger side car of her passenger side of the car by herself. Her sister grabbed the walker for her, and she was then able to use the walker to walk up the ramp to the elevators and into the elevators to the top floor. She lived on the 17th floor of the apartment, and she was able to get out of the elevator. She had a little bit of trouble getting out of the elevator. She had to lift up her walker over that point where the elevator stops and the building starts, but she was able to get out herself, walk through a long corridor to her apartment, and she continues to improve. Let's look at the last case. One more case. So this is a young woman in her first year of university. So she came to see me because she was feeling depressed, and she had been for the last several years. And she was taking Tylenol every day after lunch because she would develop headaches in the afternoon after a morning full of class. She also had difficulty in concentrating and felt self-conscious because she felt that she was taking a lot longer to finish her work compared to her friends. And she played hockey for most of her life. And she also recently developed exercise-induced asthma. I asked her when her headache started, and she said shortly after a few falls on the ice around 14 or 15 years of age. And so then she started getting headaches, and they progressed and became more and more painful. So out of the remedies that we discussed, what remedy would you give her? What would you do?
Someone mentioned natrum.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, remember Natrum Salt? So a leading remedy for old injuries, inability to think, decreased mental function. She was getting a little bit of anxiety because she felt like she was behind her class, and asthma following a head injury. So yeah, she was given natrum sulfuricum. And after 6 months, her head pain got better and her mood lifted, and she described herself as being more present in her day-to-day life. She doesn't get those study headaches daily anymore. She does get them occasionally when she's feeling under stress during exams or when she has a big assignment due. And her asthma is much better, and she doesn't need to take her puffer regularly. So that's the third case. And I just wanted to finish off with what an appointment looks like. with a homeopath. So when you first visit your homeopath, the initial assessment could look different between different practitioners. Generally, your initial evaluation will be approximately 1.5 to 2 hours. Some homeopaths may take longer. And when you come in for your first appointment, we ask you detailed questions about your physical, your emotional, your mental symptoms or challenges. We want to know what makes you unique and different. We want to know why you are you and what makes you unique. So we want to know what makes your symptoms better or worse. So for instance, are you better with cold? Are you better with hot? What kinds of foods you crave? What kind of foods you dislike? What are your sleep patterns? Is there a time that you wake up at night at a specific time? What are your dreams? Are there recurring dreams? What are your fears? So do you have a fear of thunderstorms? Do you have a fear of crowds? Do you have a fear of strangers? What are your weather preferences? Are you a hot person? Are you a chilly person? Are you affected by the wind? Some people love the cloudy weather. And we want to know what your sensations are. So are you experiencing dull pain, sharp pain, bruising? So it may be beneficial to keep a diary for a few days before you see a homeopath. And then once we have all of that information, we look at the patterns and symptoms that guide us to find a homeopathic remedy that best matches your particular symptom pattern. So that's it for my presentation. And we can use the rest for quick Q&A.